a new NFL mock draft. And of course, that means another mock draft reaction on the BLV. This time, Connor Rogers of NBC and the Stock Exchange NFL Draft Podcast. It's a pretty darn good draft podcast if you're interested. Connor Rogers plays general manager for all 32 NFL teams in this version of his mock draft. I love the GM style mock drafts because we actually get to dive into the analysis of what you would do with every pick. And that allows me to sit here on my high horse, play judge, play jury, play executioner for Connor Rogers' mock draft, and give my take on whether I believe he's right or wrong with his selections from number 1 through number 32 in the 2025 first round of the NFL draft. Gronk, spike the like button for more NFL draft analysis just like this, and subscribe. Don't be a jabroni. Let's go, guys. Let's react to Connor Rogers and his Be a GM mock draft. I will be coming out with my very own general manager mock draft closer to the draft, probably the week of, somewhere around there. Let's get started with the first pick in the 2025 NFL draft. He is not predicting that Cam Ward will go to the Titans, but he probably also is. He would pick Cam Ward. Okay, I agree. And I think a big part of it is that the Titans didn't give their general manager didn't give himself any sort of avenue to go anywhere else with this pick, right? Like Tennessee did not spend money on a quarterback. They're not going to roll with Will Levis. You might be the biggest Will Levis fan that exists. They're not going to be able to roll with Will Levis because they can't. They would be laughed out of the building. They'd be laughed off the field. Their fan base would not attend games. I mean, it would be just unreasonable. So they have to pick a quarterback here. And the number 1 quarterback with the highest upside in the draft is Cam Ward. And I've brought it up multiple times. I think there's 3 skills that separate him. He has excellent second-level throwing ability because of his arm strength and his power to hit those throws in tight windows. He's very composed on and off the field, in the pocket or out of the pocket. He's very confident, which leads to great leadership skills. And that aura is what players are looking for. They're going to follow that individual. And then third, I think the skill that really separates him is his releases and his arm angles, which really affects the RPO game and the screen game. So Cam Ward, out of the U, goes number 1 if Connor Rogers were general manager. I respect it. Number 2, Travis Hunter goes to the Cleveland Browns. And I would agree here. I don't think there's a quarterback that clearly should go second. I am not a Shedeur Sanders guy. I've talked about that many times already. And I broke down why in my quarterback draft analysis, my quarterback rankings video. Because of that, although I would want to pick a quarterback here if I were Cleveland, I don't think that one justifies it in the first round, in the top 3. Okay? So Travis Hunter, he gives you a very high floor as a general manager because you have 2 positions that he could thrive at. And I think he's going to be a very talented wide receiver because he's got great ball skills and he's phenomenal after the catch. And his body movements, he's just a unique athlete. So I think Hunter is a safe choice, and I prefer him over Abdul Carter for the Browns because I think they need a receiver more than they need a pass rusher. They put $40 million into Myles Garrett. At number 3, Abdul Carter to the Giants. I think Abdul Carter is so far and away the best player remaining on the board that despite the need for maybe a quarterback of the future, an offensive lineman like in the interior, which you could maybe get later, or even a corner I feel like the Giants don't have that many screaming needs. So just take the best, most talented player. So I agree with Connor here. I think Abdul Carter is clearly that. You know, Chris Simms, who joined him on this podcast for this mock draft, actually called Abdul Carter like a borderline generational player. Like every 4 or 5 or 6 years, this type of player comes out. And when you really watch Abdul Carter, the bend, right, is very unique. The movement is very unique. The explosion. It is very much Micah Parsons 2.0. Like if you can get that in your defense, that's a pretty impactful individual. So, yeah, I mean, even if you like Kayvon Thibodeau, which I'm not the biggest fan of him, I feel like you could still just roll with a deep defensive end depth chart. Like, that's how the Giants have always been most successful, is through their pass rush. They beat my Patriots twice in the Super Bowl because of their pass rush, right? So, Abdul Carter at number 3, I'm cool with it. At number 4, here's a slight shocker or surprise. My Patriots with Connor Rogers as the GM. Maybe we got to hire Connor Rogers. Draft T-Mac out of Arizona. So let's see what the description is here for the pick. All right, let's start to spice it up. After the 3 players above, the tier of prospects starts to level off a bit. I agree. While many have bailed on being excited about McMillan, I'm not ready to waver. New England needs to get Drake May a big physical perimeter target. McMillan and Stephon Diggs would be a much-needed improvement at wide receiver. Yes, it would. And they can capitalize on the depth of the offensive line class on day 2. Okay, fair enough. So he explained why he wouldn't go offensive line. He would go with wide receiver. And I think if you're looking at the class of wide receivers, it's hard to find a player like McMillan. I think that boosts him up. At least for me personally, that makes me want to draft him higher, especially if I need this type of player who's going to be able to line up outside and win one-on-ones, play as the X receiver, which I understand has never been a huge part of the McDaniels offense, really outside of Randy Moss. It's never been a huge part. You know, we've had talented receivers at that position, but never been the focal point, right? Slot and tight end has always been that focal point, and even receiving, running back, those players have been more involved in the McDaniels offense. Now, McDaniels promises to switch some things up. Maybe a big part of that was Tom Brady and his personal playing style, because he was a part of that offense for so many years and was the biggest influence over it. While Drake May is a little bit more of an aggressive downfield thrower than Tom was, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean he's better. No, it just means they have slightly different styles. So getting somebody like McMillan who can be a downfield target, I think he's very smooth and effortless when he moves. I think that his body control and his hands are excellent. And I think people are overthinking him. Like, I don't really know why everybody is all of a sudden like so down on him. If he went in the top 5, I would not give it a negative grade, especially if it were for New England, who's desperately needed a big-time wide receiver that can win one-on-ones on the perimeter for years. Years. So I like this pick, Connor. I respect it for my team. I like it. Number 5, Mason Graham. This is the most predictable pick. I've gone over this a million times at this point. Honestly, if I were the GM of Jacksonville, I'm not sure I would pick Mason Graham. I'm not sure. I might go with a different player here. I'm not exactly sure who, so I can't really deny it or debate it. But maybe I'm just tired of seeing Mason Graham going number 5 in every single mock draft. But I don't think I'm quite as high on Mason Graham as some other people. I just don't know if he's quite as good of a pass rusher as he's being built up to be. I'm not sure if he's quite the specimen that he's being built up to be, because a lot of his tape, it comes down to his quick, his penetration, his ability to, disrupt, and his effort. And it's not like some of the measurables are not necessarily there with the elite defensive tackles. That's what scares me a little bit. But he says he's a force in the trenches, showing off strength against the run, relentless effort rushing the passer. Jacksonville's front 4 becomes a huge advantage. I definitely think Jacksonville, using on a D tackle, it's arguably their biggest need. So I can't say that it's a bad pick. It's just that I wonder if there would be a better pick. Guys, let me know in the comments if you would go with Mason Graham to Jacksonville at number 5. Number 6, Ashton Jeanty to the Raiders. I understand. I just recently going over the running backs again, and I'm going to be releasing probably a top 10 running backs rankings pretty soon here. Ashton Jeanty, to me, is far and away the best running back in the class. He is special, and I understand the pick because he's a human pinball. And I feel like with the Raiders, like I brought this up last mock draft reaction, you need a guy to sell jerseys in Vegas. You need a guy that's going to bring in the people that are visiting Vegas to want to go see the Raiders. That is an element of it. And Jeanty could be a special playmaker. The Raiders, they have the Pete Carroll influence who had Marshawn Lynch, big part of those Seahawks teams. Kind of a similar type player here with Jeanty. Right? Jeanty's also very good off the field personality-wise, a guy that could lead everybody for years to come as one of their peak or prime best players, along with Brock Bowers. And then you have some unique nature to your offense with one of the best running backs in football potentially and one of the best tight ends in football, maybe even the best at both positions, which is pretty unique. So that could be pretty cool. So at number 6, I understand it. I think that in this class, there isn't a player at corner that I feel like would be justifiable. I don't think there's a defensive tackle that really feels like it's justifiable at 6. And I don't think that there's a wide receiver with McMillan off the board. I think the one that I would debate is T-Mac, but he's already gone. So I get it. Number 7, Membu to the Jets. I like this pick. Again, there's a reason it's commonly mocked because he is the best right tackle in the class. The Jets have an awful right tackle situation. And I think the fundamental thing as a general manager is you're thinking, we could have one of the best left tackle, right tackle combinations for years to come in the NFL. That sets up any quarterback down the road up for success. So, yeah, I mean, whether it's Justin Fields now or the next quarterback that eventually will come in and replace Justin Fields, we will have an awesome tackle duo in the trenches, and that's where Aaron Glenn comes from, Detroit, right? They want to dominate. They want to be physical. They want to be gritty. They want to bite kneecaps. So Membu makes a lot of sense. The Carolina Panthers selecting Mike Green. This would be my pick as well. I think Mike Green is a top 10 pick in this draft. I think that he is closer to Abdul Carter than people want to realize. I think Mike Green, from a fundamental pass rushing bag perspective, when you're thinking about all the different moves he has, when you're talking about the quickness, the hands, the bend, those sort of tools that I look for in an edge rusher, and I love studying edge rushers. It's one of my favorite positions. Mike Green is that guy. And he also has the production last year, so that makes me comfortable with this pick. The Panthers just need a real alpha edge rusher. Like, they don't need some hybrid guy that might be good at both positions but isn't. That's a Jalen Walker snub. But I think they need a real rusher, a real dude, right? Because Derek Brown is a very good player, but he is not a great sack guy. Number 9, Will Campbell to the Saints. I agree with this pick. Turtle's going to agree with this pick as well. Campbell can immediately play left guard. A lot of people think he will play left guard in the NFL, including both Connor Rogers and Chris Simms when I was listening to this earlier. And I didn't see all the picks, but I saw some of them. So this isn't a pure reaction, but it allows me to understand the logic. So with Will Campbell, and you guys could check it out. I think it's rather on the NBC. Yeah, it's on the NBC Sports channel or something. They release both parts of the mock draft. If you guys want to hear like the reasoning behind it, it's good. And it's on the Chris Simms Unbuttoned podcast if you guys want to listen to it. But Will Campbell, I don't get anything. I don't get any kickback from that. I'm not a part of their podcast. I'm just giving you where you can go to kind of understand what the reasoning is. But Will Campbell, yes, if he's a left guard, he's going to be a very good left guard. But he could also potentially play left tackle, potentially play right tackle, right? Like, so he's going to have tackle guard versatility on an offensive line that has a very good center, has Fuaga as well. And really, that's about it in terms of like security on the offensive line, especially long term. So I think that would be a pretty sweet left side duo as well, as he points out here with Fuaga. At number 10, Kelvin Banks to the Bears. This seems a little high for Kelvin Banks. I think I would prefer a different position for the Bears. So I disagree with Connor Rogers' pick here. I would disagree with this pick. I would pick somebody else as the GM. I would consider Hampton at this pick. I would maybe consider a defensive end, an edge rusher, right? And I haven't fully ranked my edge rushers yet, but I would probably consider going with the third best edge rusher on the board instead of going with Banks. Because personally, my evaluation of Braxton Jones is that he is a solid left tackle. They also picked a third-round tackle last year, so they've spent on that position. Banks, a lot of people have him projected as starting at guard and then going to tackle, although it feels like he could play either one. He's very athletic, and he moves very well. I'm not saying this is a bad pick. I can understand it. You can never go wrong with the left tackle. I just think they could use defensive line more. That's my opinion. Number 11, Jalen Walker to the Niners. I personally don't like this pick because I don't think Jalen Walker is a fit for this defense, personally. I guess he could be, but I don't often see these type of players in the Niners defense. I don't see the versatile hybrid player fitting in the Niners scheme. I've never really seen a player like this thrive in San Francisco, right? Like, now I've seen the Eric Armstead type where he's an edge and a D tackle, but I've never seen the Dante Hightower, like the linebacker / edge rusher guy. And that's kind of what Jalen Walker is. Maybe, I don't know if he's quite good enough as an off-ball linebacker for him to fit in next to Fred Warner consistently. Maybe Robert Saleh has enough creativity to use him in a variety of ways. I heard that Chris Simms kind of brought him up and compared him to Bryce Huff from the Jets, who ended up going to Philly and kind of being a bust of a pickup in free agency, but very good with the Jets. Quick, finesse pass rusher, right? Personally, I don't think this is a good fit. I don't think it fits the defense because I think they would rather go with somebody a little bit longer, bigger, more powerful. They do like their speed rushers, but I don't know if Walker is quite big enough or the prototype for this pick at number 11. Number 12, Tyler Warren to the Cowboys. That's an interesting pick. I can't really say this is a poor pick. I would just say that they need other positions more, in my opinion. Like, unless you really think Tyler Warren is like so much better than the next best receiver or the next best running back or a defensive tackle here or even like an offensive line. I mean, they need so many things, in my opinion. Like, they need a linebacker. I mean, Dallas can use a lot. And one of the positions they don't really need is tight end. I mean, Jake Ferguson is a solid tight end. He's not amazing, but he's solid. And he is entering a contract year, as he points out. But they also have Schoonmaker, who actually wasn't bad at the end of last year. Like, I'm not sure if Connor Rogers really believes the same thing as me, but I don't think they need a tight end. I think they need a number 2 receiver. I think they need a running back at this spot, or they need a defensive tackle or linebacker. That's my opinion. I would even maybe take a corner here. I mean, I just don't think that that's a position that they should be picking here. Number 13, Malachi Starks. Oh, that's interesting. To the Dolphins. Now, I disagree because I don't think I would pick Starks this high. But secondly, I feel like safety at 13, you have to be very special to be picked here at safety. I just don't think it's quite valuable enough position when you consider that Miami's offensive line is a train wreck. Teron Armstead is retired, and their defensive line is also very thin. So I would prefer a defensive line or offensive line pick here. I understand he's the GM. I know that their safety position is quite poor, but it's a reason. They're going budget with the safety position. Number 14, Colston Loveland. I can agree with that pick. I think that Loveland is closer to Warren than people think. I think it's a W. I agree with that pick. Number 15, nothing really to say. Jahad Campbell to the Falcons. I totally disagree with this pick. The Falcons linebackers are good. I think the best area of their defense is linebacker. Yeah. I had the best area of their defense besides free safety and cornerback 1, right? If you're looking at the complete position group, linebacker is their best position. So I like Campbell a lot, but I don't see how they would pick a linebacker over an edge rusher. Number 16, Arizona Cardinals, Will Johnson. This was brought up on X, relating and kind of debating my Cardinals video, which I appreciate everybody watching. Will Johnson was brought up by one of, I think it was Maserati Marv on X, a fan account or something. And he said Will Johnson would be the pick. And to me, hey man, that would be a great pick. I feel like they need a perimeter corner more than most teams in football. It's probably the biggest weakness on their roster and their defense. Some people think they could go interior offensive line, which I would say I could see that on second, third round, maybe not quite this high in the draft. Also, I feel like they could go with Campbell here as well at linebacker, but he's already been selected. So Will Johnson falling this far also doesn't happen too frequently. So I like this pick. I am intrigued to see where he goes because of the injury thing. But I think that as a prototype perimeter corner, he's the best there is in the draft. At number 17, Kenneth Grant out of Michigan to the Bengals. Personally, I don't like this selection. The reason for that is they already signed TJ Slayton, who was the NFL's leader in run stuff win rate last year. So they've already taken care of their run defense, which actually statistically was not that poor last year. They need pass rush and they need secondary / coverage more than a big nose tackle type, in my opinion. At number 18, Gray Zabel, the Seahawks. I like this pick. I think he's arguably the best interior lineman in the draft, in football, I guess. Adding a prospect of his caliber who can play either guard or center brings massive upgrade to the interior. The versatility is also nice as well because Seattle has multiple needs on the offensive line, so they can kind of use the best 5 available. This is kind of a conservative pick being at the position that it's at, but it's by far Seattle's biggest need. Like, it's not even close. Their O-line is awful. Like, their interior O-line is the worst in the league. Number 19, Nick Scarton out of Texas A&M. This came down to him or Ezeraku out of Boston College. Interesting. So let's think of the fit there. Now, I do feel like the Bucks would probably lean towards Nick because of his size over Ezeraku, even though I think Ezeraku is a better pass rusher. That being said, this is interesting. I guess that Rodgers has Nick a lot higher than a lot of other people. Again, I haven't ranked my edges yet. I will soon. I'm intrigued to see where these guys line up. From what I've seen of Ezeraku, I feel like I'll have him higher. But the Tampa thing is interesting because Tampa doesn't usually go for the bendy guys. They usually go for the heavy-handed, kind of longer guys. Joe Tryon, I guess, is an exception, but that didn't exactly work out. Number 20, Denver Broncos, Emeka Abuka. Okay. Wide receiver out of Ohio State. He's interesting because he's a route runner, very high IQ, very good against zone coverage, very good hands. I could see him fitting in Denver pretty effectively, but I don't know. I just don't know how much he upgrades over everybody else they have. I guess he's a more nuanced route runner, but they have like Marvin Mims and they like the Vele kid and they've got Franklin and Sutton. And I don't know. Do you guys think, let me know in the comments, do you guys think that Abuka is so much better than these other guys that he's worth the selection? I feel like Hampton would be the better pick, but I don't know. You guys let me know. I can understand it. He's definitely going to be reliable. That's for sure. The Steelers take Derek Harmon. I think that's a steal at 21. He's a perfect Steeler, I feel like. Kind of like a Javon Hargrave for them. Wins with quickness and powerful bull rush. Number 22, and he's also going to replace Cam Hayward in a year or two. Shamar Stewart to the Chargers. Interesting. There's an argument the Chargers could use reinforcements at both edge rusher and defensive tackle. Well, they don't need a starting edge rusher. They need a future edge rusher because Khalil Mack will be gone soon. They need more of a defensive tackle, but it depends on what you think of Shamar Stewart. Stewart, who has unique size and athleticism, can disrupt from multiple alignments in the defense. So he's saying that he could maybe play, inside or out because of his strength, power, and athleticism, which, fair take. I haven't really seen that take with Stewart very often. The take with Stewart is that he's super athletic, but doesn't have a lot of production. But a lot of people don't use the strength of, maybe the versatility aspect. So I could see a team like the Chargers with that college background using him in unique fashion. So that's an interesting pick. Number 23, Jaden Higgins to the Packers. That feels like a reach to me, but I don't know if he's quite athletic enough to be in a first round type of conversation. This is as early as you'll see Higgins in a mock draft. There you go. But the fit with Green Bay is too good. Okay. I think he's the third best receiver in the draft with size, above average tracking, ball skills, and ability to win both inside and out. The Packers need a player who can develop into a true number one, and Higgins has that potential. All right. I mean, okay. I don't disagree with the position. I don't know if the Packers are going to find a true number one in this draft I'd prefer maybe they go with a corner or an edge rusher just because maybe those are slightly stronger at this spot, but I guess corner, not really. Potentially defensive line, edge rush, but those are also deep positions, so it's hard to argue. I mean, if he loves Higgins that much, he is the GM. I can't really debate it. Number 24, Revel out of South Carolina, or East Carolina, sorry. I'll stand by that. Revel didn't tear his ACL in September. He would have been a top 15 pick. He has all the size and speed you'd want as an outside man-to-man corner, physicality to hold against the run. Adding him to the secondary would allow Brian Flores to get back to his aggressive ways. Well, now I do agree with that. And I will say that the Vikings need corner. And ideally, Brian Flores is looking for physical, press, man-to-man, speed, that. So, yeah, I agree. I agree with the fit. The player, I haven't seen go this high very often. Maybe back of the first round, but that's interesting. Number 25, Josh Connerly to Oregon. Out of Oregon to the Texans, I should say. Connerly's explosive lower half and quick feet give him a chance to be a shutdown pass protector on an island. I also like Connerly quite a bit. There was a Texans fan in my comment saying that they would think it would be dumb to pass on Simmons, but I will say Connerly is more ready because of the injury history and that sort of stuff dealing with Simmons. And being that the Texans do run more of a zone-based scheme, I feel like that would also be fit for Connerly, given his feet. And from what I've seen as a pass blocker, he's pretty darn effective, and that's what the Texans need most. Texans should not pass up a potential tackle. I agree. Whatever their pick is, it should be a tackle or a guard. I mean, it should really be probably a tackle first round, guard second round type conversation. Number 26, Jahdae Barron out of Texas to Los Angeles Rams. Okay. The Rams could use Barron in a similar way to the Eagles use Cooper DeJean. Their front is so talented. Yes, their front is awesome. I think linebacker is a position they also need, which they could target in the second round. But I would agree that secondary should be probably their primary focus in the first round. And Barron makes a lot of sense because he could cover multiple positions for them. They play a ton of zone, so I feel like he could get away playing the perimeter. He could also play nickel, maybe even safety. So that does make a lot of sense. Number 27, Donovan Ezeraku out of Boston College. Yes, the Ravens need pass rush. I agree. At least me and Connor Rogers see the Ravens similarly. I think the Ravens, one of their missing pieces to a Super Bowl is one more guy that on third down can get to the quarterback. And this is that guy. He's a master of creating advantageous rush angles and doesn't lose momentum when he dips his shoulder around tackles. He has great bend. Number 28, Donovan Jackson, offensive line out of Ohio State to Detroit. Seeing his name a lot in the first round now. Seems like it's very likely. It feels like every time I get to this slot, the Lions are sitting in great position. Yeah, that's something I've noticed in mock drafts too. They can add another edge rusher, Mykel Williams potentially, or capitalize. Mykel Williams fits the Lions prototype really well too. Capitalize on a wide receiver that falls or goes back to their identity and rebuild the offensive line. Yeah, I think offensive line, defensive line. That's gonna be it. Wide receiver, no, I disagree. Number 29, Hampton to the Commanders. This has been a team that I've been saying, watch out for running back, because that's kind of the missing piece in their offense. They solidified left tackle Laramie Tunzel. They've got wide receivers, McLaurin and Debo, right? Running back is that position that they could upgrade. Brian Robinson is just mid to me. Like, he's fine, but they've got Eckler, but I feel like if they added a really good above average running back, that would take that rushing game with Jaden Daniels to the next level. So I love that pick. I don't think he'll last that long though. Number 30, Buffalo Bills take Tyleik Williams, Ohio State defensive tackle. Bills have a pretty loaded roster, but I think they could make additions to their defense. Definitely their defense. I would prefer secondary, bro, personally. I think they've already done a lot of work on their front, and maybe they could add a little bit more later in the draft, but I feel like with Joey Bosa, Mike Hoyt, and Larry Ogunjobi, they've made a lot of additions, and they haven't really lost a lot of players outside of Von Miller. So, and basically Joey Bosa, Von Miller have been the swap, and Von Miller might even come back. So, I kind of feel like secondary, although they might even add like Justin Simmons, I've heard. He recently got interviewed, so he wants to go to the Bills, so look out for that. He also said the Bengals as well. Number 31, the Kansas City Chiefs take Josh Simmons. This feels like everybody's favorite for the Chiefs. Simmons is a polarizing prospect in the draft. Before he got hurt, his tape was lights out, although the level of competition was not high caliber. Yet his movement skills are everything you could hope for in a tackle prospect. His medicals will have a huge impact on when he comes off the board. Yes, absolutely. That's the type of guy that might last until the early second, and teams are trying to get him. Like, teams are trying to trade up for him and make a move, right? I'm interested to see how far he slides, where he lands, that sort of deal. And a team like the Chiefs, a team, that needs offensive linemen, a team like the Texans, maybe even the Eagles would land him late in the first round just because he's so talented, right? And the tape shows a great player when he was not hurt. Walter Nolan to the Eagles, who Chris Simms didn't seem to like when I was listening to the podcast. He says that, Nolan's too inconsistent to be a first-round pick. So that's interesting. And this is a very good defensive tackle class. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of different takes on the different defensive tackles, and these guys go up and down the board because of it. But Nolan has largely been a first-round pick in a majority of the mocks, but we did see him in the second round of Mel Kiper's. So interesting. Nolan is a gap shooter who can out-athlete interior blockers. However, he runs hot and cold as a pass rusher because he still needs to develop a counter move. He's on the ground more than you would prefer. This is a classic case of the Eagles knowing that they can continue to develop him. Well, definitely, I don't think defensive tackle will be their pick. I know that they love defensive line. I think it's more likely to be an edge just because, they don't have a clear starter at edge opposite Nolan Smith. Right? Hunt is interesting, but I wouldn't call him a starter, underlined in bold. I feel like their D tackle room, they already have a threesome going on. They already have a trio, is probably more appropriate for YouTube, going on. All right? In terms of edge, I feel like, they brought in a couple interesting guys, Ojolari and Uche, but I don't think they have a long-term solution opposite Nolan Smith if Hunt isn't the guy. Nolan could rotate in, but I don't know. They could use, I feel like, long-term corner. I feel like they could use safety. I feel like they could use maybe even long-term tackle, like right tackle. There's other positions that they could use, and I just feel like defensive tackle, while they do covet that position, maybe he'd be their best player on their board. So that's a debate, but I think I would go with a different position. That'd be my personal preference. All right, guys. There it is. Connor Rogers GM mock draft. No Shedeur Sanders in the first round is the headline. And T-Mac goes to the Pats, which is beautiful stuff. Love to see it. No Shedeur. And if I was the GM, more than likely, I probably would do the same thing. That being said, when I do my GM draft, I might throw some trades in potentially. Or at least when I do some trades, I'll probably have Shedeur at the end of the first or something like that. You guys know my prediction for him right now is the Saints at number 9. That's my prediction. I wouldn't necessarily make that pick, but I could see a world where he goes in the second. I could see that world. I think there's enough reasons on tape along with enough reasons off the field, not because of him, but because of the circus that surrounds him, to maybe fade him as an NFL team. That being said, I wouldn't be shocked either if a team traded into the first to land him as well. So that's something that Rodgers obviously didn't do here. Connor didn't look at the trades, right? So maybe he would have had Shedeur at the end of the first or something if he could have traded. But that's interesting. You guys let me know. Shedeur, not in the first round. What'd you think of this mock draft? Thanks for watching. Gronk spike the like button. Don't be a jabroni and subscribe. Peace.